Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today let's have an open and honest discussion about Dungeons and Dragons Dragonlance. Alright, so you could go find, and I'm sure you all have already, a bunch of summaries of the Dragonlance setting. And it's interesting because when Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen was announced, I was like, oh, I need to kind of get a better understanding of Dragonlance. And I realized I didn't read the novels, right? But I've had a lot of Dragonlance books, right? So I'm very proud of this. I still own Dragonlance Fifth Age, Dragonlance Fifth Age Saga Edition, which was the diceless Dragonlance from 1996, and has the same cohesive rule system as the Marvel Saga system. Both of those created by TSR. Both of those birthed by Lorraine Williams, because she was a genius, and she was she was a far better business person than Gary Gygax ever was. Not a better creative, but a far better business person, right? Like a business leader. She was a better business leader than Gary ever was, and she fixed every problem he ever created, right? And carried Dungeons and Dragons from 1986 to 1997, and built a huge amount of value into it, so that it was worth $35 million cash and $35 million of bought debt. So Dungeons and Dragons was worth $65 million in 1997. Go read Ben Riggs' book, right? So I own that, and then I also owned the hardback 3.5 Purple Dragonlance campaign setting guide, which I do not regret this. I sold it. Like, hey man, I've been married 30 years. I've been married 30 years. I've been married. Yeah, I'm coming up on 31, right? I've been married 30 years, and there've been times when we were poor, like where we legit had no money, and I would sell a lot of my. It happened multiple times where I would, wax and wane. We had money and then we didn't, and when we didn't, I would sell my stuff. And I sold that book. I wish I hadn't sold it now. And get this. You can go buy the Dragonlance. You can go buy Dragonlance from Gygaxian. You can buy the Orange Spine Easily Dragonlance 1980s hardback. You can get it for $40 on Noble Knight Games. Guess what? The Dancian version that came out in the 2000s, out of stock, blown out. Cannot purchase it for any price, right? So like that tells you that is fascinating, that the Dancian 2000s Dragonlance hardback is more sought after, right, and frankly more valuable than the Gygaxian 1980s Dragonlance hardback. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing, right? So yeah, let's keep going here. All right. So with all this, you're like, what is Dragonlance, right? And multiple people have tried to answer this on the internet, and there ain't no good answers, right? And here's why, right? Dragonlance is a big old pile of a big old pile of too much, right? I think Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman had some great ideas for Dragonlance when it launched. I think Tracy's wife did some writing on it, but it seems like she did some work in the beginning, but I don't know where she is connected to it now. And it seems like Margaret Weiss did a lot more of Dragonlance than Laura Hickman ever did. Please correct me if I'm wrong about that. But the reality is, I think when this thing was launched, it was a really good idea, right? The money started to flow, and then the money fountain was just like spraying out dough, right? And they just put too much stuff up, like just too much, right? And I think there's just a lot of excess in Dragonlance, right? So one of the things I think that's going to happen with Perkinian Dungeons & Dragons, the 2020s Dragonlance D&D canon hardcover, is a reduction, right? Kind of like a tight squeeze to make Dragonlance tighter, because there's just too much in it. It is too much, right? And the reality is, if you say, hey, explain Dragonlance to me, ain't nobody got even a good 3-minute version, right? Because they're like, well, it's this and it's that and it's this and it's that, but there's a lot I didn't tell you, right? And I'm like, hey man, like that's somebody got to tighten this up, right? And so I think there was a little bit of excess on Dragonlance, and so it's going to need to get cut down, right? So I think right now I think Dragonlance needs some slicing on it to happen. So I'm hoping that Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen, will do that. I actually think Dragonlance needs to be pared down, right? Because I don't want the same thing to happen with Spelljammer and go, hey, why didn't you put 9,000 pages of content in the first book you did? There was something missing. Ugh, I don't want to see that again. Like, Spelljammer needed to get pared down. The Spelljammer product was amazing. The reviewers are wrong, and just like the reviewers were wrong about the Star Wars prequels, right? So all that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dragonlance. And am I wrong? Can anyone explain Dragonlance in 1 minute? Like, you should be able to do that with the setting, right? All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.